Welcome, everybody, to the ShopNotes podcast. I am Logan, and I am joined today by John. Today is the John and Logan Show, since Phil is not here. So we're going to see what us two idiots are doing today. So thanks for checking it out.
This episode of the ShopNotes podcast is brought to you by Woodsmith Magazine. Woodsmith Magazine has been the trusted source for all your woodworking information for over 40 years. From tips and techniques to furniture projects to shop projects. You'll find it all at Woodsmith Magazine. Subscribe today at woodsmith.com.
Sorry I call us idiots.
Yeah. No, I get it. They don't let us, just the two of us, do much together. We're like the two class clowns. They don't sit next to each other in class. They're like on opposite. Like one sit next to the teacher, the other one's on the other side of the, you just don't put them together because they get into trouble.
Exactly. And I mean, there's probably a good reason for that.
Yeah.
But you notice I'm back in my shop?
Yeah.
I
Looks
know.
Good.
She's getting clean. And to be completely fair, completely transparent, I have a guest coming to stay next week with me. So I've been cleaning the house, which is what I'm doing this afternoon.
Yep.
And that included cleaning up the shop, since I'm actually getting the carpets cleaned tomorrow. And so for the last couple of weeks, probably the last month, my shop has been covered in blue sawdust from turning a bunch of turkey calls that were dyed blue. And it was just like, it was like staining the carpet. I'm like, I know if I don't get it clean, I'm going to drag blue throughout the floor. So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, my shop right now, the last time I looked, I had sidewalk chalk on the floor and a half blown up kiddie pool, and it's just that time of year where stuff's coming in and out of the garage, tripping over scooters
cats liked
and,
water.
and bikes. Yeah.
Oh.
Cats?
Yeah, kiddie pool. Is that what you said?
Oh, kiddie pool.
I think I think cats like water.
Yeah, they hate it.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
That's fun though. So I got a question for you, John. And this is a kind of a tie-in to my next editor letter that I wrote yesterday for the next issue of Popular Woodworking magazine. And shameless plug there. Are you a perfectionist? And two-part question. And are there times when it is okay to not be a perfectionist if you are?
That's what I was going to say, because there, in some ways I am. There are like little things that we've mentioned throughout these podcasts that is just like ridiculously like perfectionism, like redoing the drywall behind kitchen cabinets that no one will ever see, like texturing it, painting it, all that stuff. There's little things craftsmanship wise where it's like you have to have all the screws lined up and clocked and so they look uniform, and so it bugs me. Like I see people just like a screw go here, screw go there, and it's like they're not all measured out and pre-drilled. And like I was just doing a deck at my sister, helping my sister with a deck, and it's like I would be measuring out where all the screws are so they're even from the edges and they, like all lined up, and it's like it's a deck,
Yeah. Well,
so there are things like that where it bugs me, but then there's times where it's just like, you know what? It's just a jig that I'm going to throw away after this project's over, and why am I going to all this trouble and things like that? So there are things that I'll go overboard on that bug me, and then there's some times where it's just like, let it go. Let's get this done and move on type thing. Yeah. So,
well, and that's what I was going to say. I'm glad that I just finished attaching the top to that picnic table today while you were out at lunch, and I'm glad I got it attached and loaded in my truck before you got back, because I didn't measure those screws. They're just haphazard wherever I could fit the drill. So. Yeah,
which is underneath the table, so it's like I would go to that trouble, but nobody's ever going to see it.
Yeah.
So
well,
it's like, who cares?
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm getting at, right? Is that it was a question. It came up last week. We built that picnic table when you were gone, right?
You built the top the
Yep.
day that I left.
I remember
So.
complaining that I didn't have John to help me with the top. Well, and so the whole thing was a combination of two discussions I had. So basically, that's what my editor letter, this next issue of Hop Wood, is about, is perfectionism and the pursuit of perfectionism, or the pursuit of perfection. Okay, and it's something that I've had a discussion with Becky on, and I also had a discussion with Danielle, my designer at Pop Wood, because she asked me last week when she was visiting. She said, "Are you a perfectionist?" And I said, "Absolutely not. Like, I'm not, and I will be the first one to tell you that. But I will tell you that with a caveat that I will always try for perfection, but I don't beat myself up over it. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm pretty good at stepping back and taking in the whole scheme of things, what matters and what really doesn't matter. So like, the discussion I had with Becky was when we were building the top, or when I was building the top on that table. I had routed, or I had cut a groove in the ends. So basically, the top ends up being like a breadboard looking end on that. So there's a groove in the breadboard ends, and then a tongue on the slats that go into it. And I had one of those ends stood on edge, put one of the long slats in it, and it was standing on the workbench. And I just turned around and walked away from it, and the whole thing fell over and cracked the tongue, or cracked the groove edge off of one of the ends. And I looked at it, I was like, wow, I probably shouldn't have done that. And Becky's like, how do you not get mad at something like that? Like, how do you not beat yourself up over that? I'm like, well, because, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it now, right? Like, yeah, I mean, obviously, dummy me shouldn't have stood up and walked away from it, but there's nothing that getting mad about it will do, and I can fix it, so it's not that big a deal. So in the grand scheme of things, that crack doesn't really matter. Like, yeah, it was my inconvenience. I had to go find some super glue and accelerator to fix it, especially so we could stop or continue filming. But the other discussion I had was with Danielle this last week. And the discussion I had with her was her asking me if I was a perfectionist. And I said, absolutely not, but I will try for perfection when I can. In particular, I was working on a toolbox that you're modeling for me right now. And I'm sure you've probably noticed a few things on it that are not perfect. There was a couple of issues with the router collet that caused some issues on the box. The dovetails turned out pretty good. There's not many gaps in the dovetails, but that's I guess what I'm getting at is a large section of this pop wood issue ends up being we were kind of joking about it because it ends up kind of being like the theme of the issue is it's the dovetail issue. You know, I have that dovetailed toolbox. I have a article on hand cutting dovetails, and then there's a hand plane by Dylan Baker that has a sliding dovetail that connects the sole to the body, and there is a project by Keenan that is a shaker sewing counter, kind of like the one we just did for Woodsmith. Very similar. That is, I mean, that thing's chock full of dovetails, chock full of a bunch of dovetails you don't actually even see. And, you know, I don't want people to be scared of any of these projects because it's like, oh my God, that's so many dovetails. And I'm not going to try it because it's not going to look good. And, you know, I guess my biggest fear is somebody would be turned off by them, you know, be turned off by all those dovetails, which for some reason, you know, dovetails and hand-cut dovetails in particular kind of get put on this pedestal, right? Like it's the epitome of craftsmanship. Like, you know, you're not a true craftsman or if you can't hand-cut dovetails, or, you know, I know that piece of furniture has hand-cut dovetails on it, so it has to be a really nice piece of furniture, which is just, I mean, it's just not the case. So I guess what I'm getting at with this whole thing is it's interesting to me that people always try to be perfectionists when in the grand scheme of things, there are very, very, very few times where perfection really, really matters. You know, I think it's a fine goal to have, But I always think, like, even if I look at something and think, oh, it's perfect, like, I mean, I'm just grabbing something that's sitting on my bench next to me. Like, of course, now I can't get it out of its holder. Dang it. Terrible example, Logan, because it's stuck. Okay, so, like, for example, this is a smoking pipe. Like, if this was a handcrafted pipe, somebody might look at this and say, hey, that's absolutely perfect. Like, you could not, like, there's not a single flaw on that. But what if somebody changed the shape slightly and it looked better? Like, is it truly perfect then in this state? I guess it's that type
Right.
of the question I ask, is it's like, yeah, it doesn't really matter. So that's, I guess that's what I'm getting at. I try not to rant about it, but,
Right.
because I know there
Yeah.
are,
No, yeah, perfectionism. It's definitely both a blessing and a curse, especially in woodworking. It's like like you said, you can shoot for perfection, but there's no perfect piece of
yeah,
wood, and no matter what you do, you're gonna run into something unexpected or drop something, or a bit will move, or you'll just make a mistake. And I think half of woodworking is figuring out what to do when that
yeah,
happens. You learn the little tricks along the way, and kind of like we were building that picnic table, and Phil was gluing up pieces and just like totally clamped down on the cedar, which is pretty soft, and just smashed
yeah,
like the fibers in with the clamp heads. But it's like, over time you learn the trick of using an iron and a wet
steam
rag,
it out.
and forcing a little steam into there, and it pops right back out and good as new. And if you're just starting out, you might run into things like that and think it's a total loss and get frustrated and start over. But I think as you learn a lot of the tricks of the trade, you just kind of come to expect that you're going to run
Yeah.
into those things, and you just learn how to
And
deal
just
with
to
them.
be clear, Phil Hewer, because I know you're listening, John is calling you out on that.
Yeah, that's right. Don't worry, I saved your butt again, Phil.
No, I mean, I guess it's one of those things that I will say, when I first started, woodworking is the one thing that I have always tried to be a perfectionist at, or I used to try to be a perfectionist at, because it's the one thing that you can control, and it's really I don't want to say it's a reflection of yourself, but you're the only person touching that item, right? So how it comes out is up to you and up to your hands and your abilities. So I always tried to be a perfectionist, but then I think I got to a point, and it was some time after I started at Woodsmith, and I'm guessing it had something to do with, and I don't know this for sure because I can't say that a switch flipped in my head, but it was probably something to do with us working on the show, because the show, building stuff on camera, whether it's a photo or a video camera or photos, it sucks. It's a pain in the butt because everything that is bound to go wrong will go wrong. And you're always
Oh yeah,
rushing. People are
definitely.
waiting for you. You feel the pressure, whether you're paying a photographer and you're trying to continue to move so you don't have to book another day with them and stuff. It's not fun. But I think I realized maybe it was the gentleman's dresser. God, that stupid thing. I threw brass screws in the side of that gentleman's dresser and broke off like 3 of them, and then
Yeah.
tried to drill them out and they snapped off. And I don't know. Maybe it was that. But
Yeah.
I think what I
Yeah.
learned, or what I discovered for myself at least, is as soon as I stopped trying to be a perfectionist and didn't worry about stuff as much anymore, I really started to slow down. So I started to make less mistakes and have less issues. I was more methodical when I was doing stuff, setting stuff up, making sure that, if I need to go grab a 3/8 inch bit, I'm taking the time to go through our 23/8 inch bits and grab a sharp one, or just being more slow and methodical about it. But then I also started to enjoy what I was doing more. And those were the two big things that I noticed. So, just it was one of those things. It was just interesting to me.
Yeah.
I had two conversations in the last couple of weeks that kind of centered around the same thing. and I thought it was an interesting topic.
Yeah. Yeah, like you mentioned, it seems like when you're stressed or rushing, that seems when things go wrong, and then you're more stressed and more rushing, and it just becomes a cascade of mistakes. And sometimes you're like, well, this is a good time to take a break and walk away and maybe think about this for a little bit. And
Yeah.
so, but yeah, it's
It's
definitely
funny because that happened. That happened to Dylan. It was, I don't know. You know what it was? It was Friday, a Friday. And Dylan and I we were tag teaming our photographer. So we had Chris, our photographer, bouncing between myself and my toolbox, and Dylan and his hand plane he was building. And both of us, just stuff kept happening. It was like, it wasn't the 13th. I think Dylan looked at me. He looked around the wall and he was like, or one time was like, is it Friday the 13th?
Yeah.
Because seriously, like Chris's light fell on my head in the middle of a photo. I had a collet come loose. Dylan broke at least one tap. He might have broke 2 taps, and then his handle was off centered. And it was like, man, it's time to take a break.
Yeah.
Go grab lunch. Go have a drink at lunch, and then come back.
then everything will look better.
Yeah, then it doesn't matter. Oh, funny.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, no, it was just, I don't know, interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, definitely when you're shooting for perfection, like you said, it's like you shoot for perfection, but you'll settle for 95%. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck on that, trying to gain that last 5% or 1%, or, it's just, it can become a hindrance. It's like,
well, and to be fair, I even referenced one of Phil's favorite sayings in my other letter is half the trick is just knowing when to stop picking at it. You know what I mean? Because there's a point where you pick at it long enough and you just make it work. It's like picking at a scab.
Yeah.
It's like you pick it, it's going to bleed. It's going to get worse.
if you keep sanding that dark spot in the veneer, it's just going to get bigger.
Yeah. Well, that was to be honest with you, that was one of the issues that I thought I got over the hump on this toolbox. And if I remember to put up a show notes page, I'll put up a sneak peek of this toolbox. I'm super happy with how it came out. Aside from a couple issues, it's just going to get a few decorative ebony inlays in it. But one of the issues I had, they all stemmed from a collet. We had a collet in the photo studio that is bad. I cranked down on that thing, and the bit still moves. And when you're routing a stopped groove, you can't see where the bit is, and all of a sudden it pokes through the top of a workpiece that shouldn't have a hole in it.
Yeah.
And that happened in one area. And then I had another area that it must have moved as well, but it didn't poke through. But it got really, really thin. And I had finished the toolbox. It's a tool chest. I'm going to call it a tool chest. I had finished the tool chest. And all hand-cut dovetails, a tray that fits in it, some tool storage and stuff. I routed the grooves for the hinges, which I've ordered new hinges because I wanted a little bit bigger hinges than the one I had. But anyways, I went to put a coat of tinted shellac on it. So it's shellac that has like the antique maple dye mixed into it, just to color the figure a little bit more before I clear coated it. And I did that, wiped it on, and then I always cut it back with 220 or 240 sandpaper. And I'm like, wow, that one area is really dark. Like, it's just exactly what you're saying, John. It was really dark. And so I touched it, and it poked through. And I was like, oh, no, it's on the front of the toolbox, right on the lid. Like, it's in the worst spot possible. And I ended up, I poked it down into the groove. So I had used the vacuum to suck it up, and it came back up above the surface. And so I was kind of touching it, poking it back in place, seeing how good I could get it to hold if I super glued it and stuff. And I thought, okay, yeah, that'll work. So I kind of brushed my hand over it, and it broke, and it fell down in the hole. I'm like, well, it didn't break. It actually just fell down in the hole again. I was like, all right, well, I'll just use the vacuum again to suck it out. What did I do? I sucked it right off the front of the toolbox. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, and this is Sunday night. This is legitimately Sunday night at like probably 11:30 at night. I'm in the shop at work. And so I had to empty out the dust extractor, find the piece that just got sucked into the vacuum, that I just sucked into the vacuum, and ended up making a plug, glue it in. And quite honestly, you can't really tell. It blended in really well. But I will end up probably doing some sort of decorative, like ebony string inlay or something on it. But, just, it's one of those things. It's like, man, if only I could rewind to the week prior.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, dummy, you had one issue. Go get a different collet.
It's like, yeah, it put a blemish in a project, but it's like, have you ever been pushing like something through the table saw with a dado blade or like that with the router? It's like where it's buried and you're just pushing along. It's like, what if it just popped through right now and hit my hand? Or
yes,
it's like it could have done that type of thing where it's like, yeah, maybe I should be using a push block for this, even though the bit or blade's buried.
Yeah.
What if it just popped up?
Well,
and got me?
Yeah, and see, routers are the one thing. I won't say that I'm scared of anything in the shop. Like, I've been in a shop, long enough that nothing in the shop really scares me. I have respect for stuff in the shop, but not to the point that it scares me. But routers are the one thing that always, like, man, if your finger touches that, it turns into hamburger really quick.
Right. It's not a clean cut. It's
not a clean cut. And so routers, I do always use a push block. Same thing with a joiner. Joiners are the same thing. I always use a push block. Joiner. But you're right. Like if cutting a rabbet, like the toolbox has rabbeted lid and bottom. Cutting the rabbet, I put my hand on top and push down where the blade is. I mean, you're cutting a rabbet. The blade's buried.
Mm-hmm.
You probably should use a push block still, but I never have. And I would expect that most people don't. It's hard, I think, for the table saw blade to come up, but I've had many router bits do that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'd assume that if the table saw blade's going to move, it's going to go down. But
that's what I would expect as well. Unless your stock for some reason is thinner on one side than the other.
Yeah, true.
But speaking of which, so I have a friend. Might surprise people to know that I have a few friends. I have a friend up in Ames. His name is Clay, and Clay goes by the website name and the business name Blind Guy Woodworking. Okay, and Clay is blind. Clay has. So I'm going to do a little bit of Clay's backstory here. Clay said he'd be on our podcast at some point, so at some point I'm going to have to get him on here so you guys can meet him because Clay's a very, very interesting guy. And when people hear that he's a blind woodworker, they're just like, well, how does that work? It's like, oh, I don't know, it works pretty well. He's a pretty dang good woodworker. But Clay has diabetes, and when he was younger, he was born seeing, but by the time he was, I can't remember, he was mid to early teens, I think, he started losing his eyesight due to diabetes. And as he started in the blind school, one of the things they have him do to get really comfortable with their blindness is woodshop. He just picked up on it and ran with it. And I mean, the guy's been president of the Ames Woodworkers Association. I mean, the guy does a lot of woodworking. And I met him through sawmilling. He had me come up and mill some trees for him, and I've just been friends with him ever since. But Clay, I was talking to Clay a couple of weeks ago. He called me on some trees that he wanted me to go look at and see if we could mill them. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm kind of laid up right now." And I was like, "What do you mean, Clay?" He's like, "I had a little shop accident." I'm like, "Okay, this is gonna be good. Like, what did you do? What happened?" He's like, "Well, he was cutting a rabbet on something on his router table." He's like, my thumb got a little close. He's like, and it got down to the bone, but they reattached my thumb. And, of course, me being the smart aleck I am, I said, Clay, weren't you watching what you were doing? And he said, yeah, I was watching real close, but still got him. And that's like, oh, man, it just,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's, you talking about that just made me reminded me of that because that was a couple weeks ago. But super interesting. Yep. There's actually quite a few blind woodworkers. I'm sure you've seen the one on TikTok, right, John?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen it a few times.
Yeah, and they have some interesting marking gauges and way they do it. I've been in Clay's shop and I'll walk in and be like, Clay, how are you working in here in the dark? He's like, I thought I had the lights on for you. But it's funny because he has a big shop, and my shop's pretty small. It's, I don't know, like probably 14 by 25, so it's pretty small. But his is the size of a large 2-stall garage, and standing in his shop, he's pointing at different shelves, and he's like, "Yeah, there's some walnut up there and oak down there." It's like, how do you remember where all this stuff is? Like, I can't remember where I put stuff in my shop, and I can see it.
Mm-hmm. He could probably smell the walnut.
Maybe I should ask him. Yeah, but it's funny. It's like he actually has a YouTube channel that I'll see if I can get a link to. But yeah, here we go. So I'll put a link to that on the show notes page too, as long as I remember to do that.
Yeah.
But we're, as of next week, or as of this week, as of today, we have, 11 of 13 episodes done for this season?
Yeah. Coasting into the off season.
Yeah, no kidding. We get an off season?
Yeah. That's when we get to do our normal day jobs.
Oh,
we got to catch up on that.
That is true. So.
Or it's like we take turns going on vacation, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
so it's Phil's turn, and then
I'm gone.
I think then you're going after. You're not going until after the season's over. You're a real trooper.
That's true. Yeah, I'm taking one for the team.
Yep.
Even though, although technically I will be on next week's episode, so this season's gonna be a little different. Well, not. Mm-hmm. I won't say it's a little different. We're changing a couple episodes this season because we did one episode this week that was on location. So we went and we were doing a logs to lumber episode, which I think everybody knows was probably my idea on turning logs into lumber to kind of walk through that process. But then also the second half of it we filmed this morning with Chris. And that was working with rough sawn lumber. Like, how do you take a rough sawn board and turn it into usable parts? Because that's something we kind of glance over a lot, on the show. We assume, I don't know that we necessarily assume that people know how to get flat, true, and square boards, but it's just not terribly interesting to watch most of the time. So, but then next week's show, we have a guest on the show. And then the following week is going to be a episode dedicated to CNC, which I think will be kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I can hear all the angry emails already.
Yeah.
CNC
like, that's not real woodworking.
Yeah.
They probably said that people... The generation before said, "Oh, you're using a table saw and a router. That's not real woodworking."
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and that's part of the perspective that it's hard to get people to see. It's like it's just the next generation. I mean,
it's just another
30
tool.
years from now, everybody's going to have one,
right? Be computer printed wood.
Yeah, I mean,
just put in the sawdust and it 3D print stuff.
Probably cheaper.
Yeah.
I did see though. So we are last week of June right now. Well, like second to last week
Getting
of
there.
June.
Practically.
Yeah. Lumber prices are falling, right? Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that.
So
hopefully that sticks around.
what did it say? It said something like lumber prices. Oh yeah. Oh, geez. All right. So I just pulled up the NASDAQ. This is getting real technical for everybody right now. The high for 1,000 board feet pricing was early mid-May, it looks like, at $1,400 per 1,000 board feet. And it just closed at $866 per 1,000 board feet. So prices have almost halved since the middle of May.
Mm-hmm.
So
and yeah, we didn't see like a whole because we usually buy, hardwoods and stuff that's not necessarily affected by construction, housing, that type of thing. So yeah, it's expensive, but it wasn't as big a jump as construction lumber. But there was a few projects where we were shooting this spring between a cedar trellis and the picnic table where we had to go pick up some cedar.
Yeah,
it's just like, wow, that was like 3 times what I was expecting it to be. So I'm sure a lot of people that use construction lumber in their woodworking have really been affected, and
they've had to go to hardwoods.
Yeah,
the prices.
That's what you're saying when you were cutting up, I think, oak one day. It's like, well, I could start doing oak 2x4s and
yeah. Well, it's funny because I did do that, and I might have talked about that in the podcast. I don't remember, but yeah, I did. I cut a bunch of white oak for a guy for a deck. It's like, oh, that's gonna be an awesome deck. But no, it was funny because we get that question a lot. Like, hey, what do you guys actually? My barber just asked me yesterday, like, what do you guys do with all your projects that you build? It's like, well, depends. All depends on it's a shop-made tool or shop-made cart or something. A lot of times we just use it, right? Mm-hmm. It's very rare that we don't use it if it's like a cart or a shop-made tool. I mean, usually it hangs around for a number of years, and then at some point we'll make another one and then get rid of the old one. Furniture, occasionally we're running out of room, but a lot of times it gets put around the building for people that come and take tours and stuff. A lot of times we just sell it to employees. So there's been a couple of instances where something's getting built and an employee says, hey, we really want that. One of them is the Monterey cabinet that Dylan just designed and built. He's like, hey, I would really love to have this for my house. When it's done, I'll cover the cost of whatever, like materials, or in that particular instance, add some super nice decorative fancy tiles. He's like, I'll cover the cost of the tiles if I can have it. So it's just a nice little benefit. And for the last 4 years we've lived in our house, and we've not had any deck furniture. And I thought, that we're building a picnic table for the TV show. That's not that big a project. Like, I don't think anybody else would be interested in it. So I messaged everybody, said, hey, is anybody else interested in this? If not, I'd love to have it, and I will buy the wood for the top, because we have one like outdoor couch, and they say it's teak. I think it's Iroko, but anyways, I was like, I'll buy it, get some wood to match, and that will at least help offset some of the cost of building it. And as we started building it, I was like, this is like the most expensive thing we built this season. Like, the picnic table of all things, that was the most expensive.
Yeah, I would have thought it would have been one of the cheaper things too going into it, but it's like, there is a lot of wood in the top, and
like the
2 benches, and
I mean, I think you said that there was like $600 in cedar, which should have been probably $170 at most. In normal prices. And I had bought some Iroko for the top, so I had several $100s in the top. I mean, it's beautiful. I sent you guys a picture of it when I my wife helped me carry it onto the deck, and her soft accountant hands are not made for carrying. She said that self-admittedly, so don't send me an email saying I'm accountant shaming, because I'm not. But it looks great. Just was like, wow, I was not expecting it to be that expensive. But what do you do? Okay, so I got a question for you, John.
Yeah.
With lumber prices potentially dropping, it looks like I don't remember if I've talked about this on the podcast or not at all. I've been looking at putting up a building at my place to move my shop out into an exterior building, and the lumber prices have made that prohibitive for the last number of months. As I started to get bids, that kind of made me change my pants every time I got a bid. So hopefully that changes a little bit. What would how do I word this? If you were going to build a shop, keep in mind, this is not an unlimited budget shop. So if you were going to build a shop, what would be your must-haves in a shop?
I would want plenty of space.
Okay.
I would want climate control.
Okay. So
Thinking of
that one's on the
outside of
list.
just tools.
The plenty of space
Yeah.
is not, but
Yeah. That's like, that's kind of subjective.
Yep.
I guess.
That's
but
true.
yeah, climate control, because just like in my garage,
Mm-hmm.
I got about, here in Iowa, maybe 4 weeks out of the year where it's like perfect weather
Yeah, that's
to be
true.
out there. Otherwise, you're freezing or you're sweating.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. If you have climate control, you can just work every day of the year, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So would you try to? And this is a question I'm going to ask myself. And again, I'm not 100% set on building this building just yet. It's kind of, I mean, to be fair, it's going to be my wife's call. But would you go through I don't want to say the hassle or the exercise, but would you go through the process of putting dust collection in the concrete? Like burying the dust collection lines? I don't know if I'd do that.
Just because it's like, it always seems like you're, for me anyways, changing things or moving stuff. So it's like to set it in concrete, you set it in stone, literally. It's, you're kind of stuck. So it's like, for me, it's all about versatility. I like moving stuff around in my shop. I like things to have wheels and mobile bases. And so just to be kind of set on any one layout would be hard for me.
Yeah, and I guess
I don't have that much vision and forethought to plan it out properly.
And I guess that's what I'm getting at is it's like I don't know if I want to put the mental effort. That sounds so bad. I don't know. I'm just mentally lazy. Like I don't know if I want to put the mental effort into trying to plan out where I would want tools and what I would want those tools to be, and preemptively like plumb dust collection for them. Like I thought maybe if this all comes to fruition, like I'm hoping and planning, I thought maybe I would bury like a big 6-inch line and have like 2 ports come out of the concrete in 2 different have a port in 2 different locations. Kind of like we have, like in our shop, we have one. It used to be over by the editor bench, but where the drum sander and stuff was, where you could tee off that and get 2 or 3 machines hooked up to it. And I thought about doing that, but I don't know. It feels very permanent. Like I have more reservations about that than I did like getting married to my wife.
Because it's permanent. That's permanent.
I know.
Once you set it in concrete.
I know. Yeah. But okay, so
it's kind of like putting floor outlets in your house. It's like they're all good and convenient when you have your furniture in that layout, but then prohibits you from moving stuff around and doing something different.
And that was another part of it. Is I went when I built this house, my electrician was like, "Hey, do you want floor outlets like by your couch?" I'm like, "No, that's dumb. Like, because what happens when I haven't moved my couch in 4 years, and every time I set up my Christmas tree or I'm sitting there with my laptop, I'm like, God, it'd be really nice if there was an outlet right here.
Right.
So,
Now I got to go get a 50-foot extension cord to
yeah,
plug something in.
yeah. But no, it's same. I mean, same thing with the outlets. Outlets, I guess, aren't as bad because you get the little steel boxes that go over top of them, the steel covers that you can cover them up. But yeah, it feels very permanent to do that. So would you go through if you were putting it up like as an external building at your house? Which who knows? You might, John. You might be moving in the next couple of years. Like who knows? You might be doing the same thing. Would you go as far as to put a bathroom in it?
I think that would be really nice, depending on how far it is from your house. But
full disclosure,
just put a urinal on the side of the. Just put a urinal on the side of the building and cut a hole in the wall, and you just have really tall grass right out there.
Exactly.
So,
well, I was thinking, a shop sink would be lovely. That's something I don't have.
Yeah, I think you would definitely want plumbing just from your finishing or doing cleanup or, whatnot you need. It'd be nice to have a sink. And if you have a sink, you might as well have a toilet. So,
well, yeah. And I think retail wise, like if I would ever go to sell my house, having a finished space because it would, regardless, it would have climate control. I mean, that's just, that goes without, I would not go through the expense of putting up a building like that and building a shop in it to not put climate control in it for the extra, $2 or $3 grand to put a mini split in it or something. Like, I think it's silly not to. But from a resale standpoint, I think that would make the most sense is to put a bathroom in it. And if you're going to do that, you might as well put a small shower stall in it too, because then it could potentially act like a, my realtor told me it'd be like, it'd be like a mother-in-law suite or something like that. Mm-hmm. So
good luck with that. Good luck putting your mother-in-law out there.
Yeah. Yeah, she's from West Virginia. She doesn't really even need a building.
Yeah.
So,
or indoor.
No offense to all you people from West Virginia that I know are listening to us. She's from Ansted. I love that place. I don't like the hilly mountains, but So yeah, it's just it's one of those things I've been thinking about. Like 30 by 40 is what I'd be looking at for the shop area, which 1,200 square feet. That would be basically, it would be like 3 times what I have in here, which would be, it would be nice. I don't have that many big power tools, but I could get them then. But no, it would be nice to be able to have some like inside lumber storage and have room for a big lathe. My other must-have would be at least one overhead door, because anybody that has turned on a big lathe knows how much or how quickly a bowl like this, just a little cherry bowl that's maybe 12 inches in diameter, it just makes a pile of shavings really quickly, and it would be really nice to be able to leaf blower it.
Open the door and
just
make mulch.
Yeah, just blow it outside. Feed the grass. So, so I guess those were my big things. There's other things on the want list. Like I would love to. Some of this is a little weird. Not weird. It's only weird if you make it weird, right? Some of it is that I want a secondary location to shoot photos for Popular Woodworking. So that's driving a little bit of this push from my standpoint, which would mean that I would then be working from that building fairly regularly. So I would want and probably need some form of internet out there, which I don't know how that works. Like, do I pull a second internet line out there, or do I don't know. Do I have to pay MediaCom for a second service? I have no idea, because that gets really expensive really quickly. So, I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. I'd like to hear from anybody if they have went through the process of putting up an exterior building for a shop and what they did and what they wish they would have done differently. because
Yeah.
this is something I have no experience with. I can talk to as many people as I can to get some insight.
Yeah, you start thinking about some of that stuff. It's like adding plumbing and would be great, and then you're talking about using it for, work, and then it's like, do you frame in an office area with internet and all that stuff?
Well, I said there was a bathroom, John. Like,
right. So it's just like, just slide a desk up to the toilet, and
exactly.
you never have to get up. Put a mini fridge right there. Boom.
Exactly. No, and that was...
The mother-in-law comes to visit. She can stay in the house, and
she can work from the
stay out in
bathroom.
the shed. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was... I mean, you're right. It's like, do I go through that? I don't know. I don't know. There are many things in life that I do not know, and this is one of them. It's like I have no idea how to tackle it. I have no idea what's the best. I guess I just don't stress over it and just do what I think I should do.
Yep. Can always change it.
Yeah.
I always used to say, we can always change it. 2x4s and drywall's cheap, but not anymore. Not recently.
Did drywall prices go up? I don't know. I have no idea.
Oh, I don't know. I would assume just with all like the building boom that anything home building related would have increased some, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Probably true. So, all right. You got anything else, John? Are you working on anything?
Nope. That's pretty much it. I've still got vacation brain, so kind of easing back into it this week and see what trouble I can get into next week. So.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap this up then. So thank you guys again for listening to the Shop Notes podcast. Make sure you guys drop us a rating. Give us any comments you have, and we will take every smart remark you have. We feed on those. We love them. So make sure you send them our way. But we will catch you guys again next week on the Shop Notes podcast. Bye.
This episode of Shop Notes Podcast is brought to you by Woodsmith Plans. You'll find nearly 1,000 plans covering everything that you'd want to build. From furniture projects to gift projects, kitchen accessories, workshop projects, and jigs and more. Find your next project at woodsmithplans.com.